Hello everybody, and welcome to my Final Fantasy XIV tier list for PvP in 6.1. I've been doing PvP for the last week or so. I'm currently in Plat 1 was the highest rank that I have obtained, but I am currently sitting in Plat 2. So not the highest of all ranks, but I have some pretty good experience so far in PvP, and I just wanted to share what I thought were the strongest jobs and what were the weakest jobs, and what you could potentially pick ranking up, and if it's going to be particularly hard for you or easy for you depending on what you choose. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the melee DPS. We're going to start with Dragoon. So Dragoon has a lot of strengths. It is very bursty, very versatile when it comes to its kit. It has incredibly strong defensive capabilities as well. Dragoons are surprisingly hard to pin down. Dragoons are surprisingly hard to focus and kill with their mobility and their defensive cooldowns. In addition, their LB also can serve as a defensive cooldown if need be, though it's mostly going to be used to obliterate the enemy team. If the enemy team is chilling on points, and you use your LB and they don't notice you, they don't guard, Dragoon could be absolutely devastating on the battlefield. So for that reason, I'm putting Dragoon in S tier. And if you pick Dragoon in PvP, you're probably going to have a pretty good time. I don't think you can go wrong with picking Dragoon. Next we have the Ninja. Ninja is also very strong in PvP. Ninja is also one of the jobs that I have experience on. So Ninja acts basically as a pseudo melee, or pseudo ranged, I should say. Where you don't really have to enter melee combat all too much. You have to enter melee combat for your a few things, like you want to hit them with your mug. You might want to hit them with a Bunshin Aeolian Strike for that burst damage if you have it up. But most of your attacks actually come from your Shuriken Toss and your Kusatsu, which gives you a better Shuriken Toss. It also gives you really strong ranged AoE. Ninja is also pretty slippery since it has Shikuchi. Shikuchi makes you automatically invisible. There is something inherently difficult about playing Ninja when it comes to playing defensively. Whenever you Shikuchi, there is a chance that the attacks that are happening on you still go through during your Shikuchi animation, so you still won't get the invisibility because the server says that you got hit as you moved to your location, so it'll break you out of stealth immediately. So you need to be really careful. You can't really rely on Shikuchi stealth 100% of the time, but it's still a really good defensive tool. I'm gonna have to put Ninja more than likely in the S tier as well. Just a little bit behind Dragoons, but they're still a very solid pick. Next is the Samurai. Samurai is very, very powerful. Very great mobility. Very great burst damage. Has burst damage on command. Has really good defensives for being a melee. If you hit more than 2 targets with your Ogi Namakiri, you actually get a shield, which will protect you. You have your defensive parry attack, which reduces attacks and deals damage to enemies that are punching you. And overall, just a great kit. You're very mobile. You can dash around the battlefield. You can heal yourself, depending on if you dash and have Kasha up. You also have a bind. You can dash and do an AoE bind as well. Everyone talks about the limit break when it comes to Samurai, and yes, Samurai has a very strong limit break. Probably one of the strongest in PvP, if it is utilized correctly. there are a lot of times where you are under pressure to use your limit break correctly. So I feel like Samurai has a bit more, is a bit more skill intensive than the other two I already have on the list. But if you learn how to play Samurai and you learn how to burst in and out, you learn how to dash back and forth, you learn how to stun before doing your combos, you learn when to use your defensives and then use your LB to turn the tides of games, you can definitely make a huge impact on Samurai. So Samurai is also going in the S tier. Next we have Reaper. So Reaper is a bit of unfortunate case. Reaper has, it looks like it has the kit to do really well. Unfortunately, it falls behind in a lot of areas. It just doesn't make them as strong. It has a dot which you can place on people, and if you deal damage to them, that damage accumulates over time, and it'll do like a burst at the end. Think of like Machinist's Wildfire, but basically for melee. They have an AoE cleave that you can use that will give everyone heavy. They have a defensive in the form of Arcane Crest, which will actually boost their damage a little bit when you have it on. It also gives you a heal. Unfortunately, you don't have anything besides that. You have your portal to get away, and it is on a very short cooldown in PvP. It's only 10 seconds, so you can be zipping around the battlefield really quick. Unfortunately, you do get locked down really hard when it comes to CC. You don't really have anything to handle stuns. You don't really have anything to really handle being focused down yourself. As soon as they start focusing you down, you're in trouble. And that goes against everything that a Reaper is supposed to do. Is a Reaper supposed to stick on you, put that dot on you, burst you really hard, and watch you erupt? It's really hard to pull off consistently. The LB that Reaper has actually is pretty good. Unfortunately, it suffers from having a cast time. So the 2 seconds that you're fearing everybody in an AoE, you're in 1 second of that, you're in your cast time. You're in your animation of unleashing your Void Scent. So you already lose a second there. And then after that, your burst does go up, but you still suffer from the same problems as before. You can get hard CC'd. Your Communio, which is your final attack, has a cast time. So enemies can potentially guard this. They can potentially line of sight this. But it is very strong. They do need to bring Reaper up somehow. It's just not as strong and not as impactful as the other melee DPS. Not even close. So it's kind of a toss-up for me between C and B, because I don't think it's absolutely like terrible to the point where it belongs in C tier, but it would just barely scrape out of it. I'm gonna give it it's so rough. It's so rough. I have to put it in C. I want to put it in B, but it just needs so much help, especially compared to the other DPS. It needs help. It does. Hopefully one day they get the buffs they deserve. So last we have Monk. So Monk has a lot of good options when it comes to defensive and offensive mobility. Thunderclap is an incredibly strong tool. You can use it, has 3 charges. You can use it to dash in and out of combat, in and out of safety. So just because of that, it's already better than Reaper. Just in terms of mobility, yes, Reaper has the dash in and the dash out, but it's a lot more difficult to control, and you only have 1 charge of it every 10 seconds. Monk has 3 charges, and you gain a charge like every 10 seconds or so, and it stacks. So the mobility on Monk is just insane. The damage potential on Monk is also really good. Unfortunately, you have to be consistently in melee combat to do this. You have to consistently be hitting enemies, and most of your attacks are generally pretty weak. You get your Phantom Rush at the end of your combo, but the combo is like 6-7 GCDs. So generally what you try to do as a monk is you try to get you're punching people in the battlefield. You get to that Phantom Rush GCD, and then you look for somebody that you want to kill. You hit them with the Enlightenment. You hit them with the Rising Phoenix to buff your Phantom Rush, and then you slam them with the Phantom Rush, and that deals a ton of damage. And then if you have your LB up, which is a charge attack, which knocks them up in the air, and it deals extra potency based on if you hit them with Enlightenment. This combo can be incredibly strong, but you have to get that. Need a lot of setup in order to get that to activate. So compared to the other melee, where burst you pretty much get on demand and some even at ranged, the monk just falls behind. So I'm going to place the monk in B tier. A little bit above Reaper, but not quite the top tier. You'll probably have a lot of fun playing monk. I personally find it a lot of fun. But if you're looking to rank, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to make those really big plays that have a lasting impact on the game. Speaking of LBs that have a lasting impact on the game, we're going to touch back on Ninja really quick. The LB on Ninja, what it does is enemies at 50% or lower get instantly killed by the Ninja's LB if they're under 50%. Now this is server tick based, so sometimes you can hit an enemy below 40%, use your LB to kill them. They'll use a recuperate, so they're at 60, but because you used your LB and they were at 40% at the time, they will still die. So this chains, by the way. So this is why Ninja is up here with the big dogs. It has incredible playmaking potential. All right, so that's it for the melee. Next, we're gonna look at tanks. Okay, let's look at tanks. So let's start with the strongest tank, which is Warrior. Warrior has the ability to completely lock down the enemy team every 15 seconds, assuming they're clumped up with Fell Primal Rend. It's an AoE stun, as only has a 15-second cooldown. You can drop down on the enemy and force them to use their Purifies, and force them into a situation where they're already on the defensive. And you can do this every 15 seconds. So it's if you can plan your Primal Rends really well, you can completely lock down a good portion of the enemy team. It also has Home Gang, incredibly strong. You pull in an enemy and you give them a big ol' heavy. It's incredibly good at picking off people who are trying to run away, and picking off high priority targets. It also has an amazing amount of healing. So if you pop its defensive cooldown and do a bunch of AoE, your health is just gonna skyrocket if it was getting low. It has a couple weaknesses. It actually can get burst down if you're not paying close attention. It can get burst down. And if you're not, if the enemy team targets you and they decide to use CC on you, you have a hard time breaking out of that CC and getting to safety. You don't really have an escape option other than Fell Rending out to like someone who might be like in your back line. So its LB is also incredibly strong, reduces makes it so your enemies can't guard. So it's actually really, really strong. It also buffs their attacks as well. So it can it can definitely change games. It can definitely swing things in your favor. So just because of the entire kit that Warrior has, I place it in S tier. Very strong. Next we have the Paladin. Now, Paladin is really hit or miss for me. You find some really great Paladins and you find some really bad Paladins, but that really, you'll find that in any game, right? So I'm looking at the impact that the Paladin makes overall, assuming they know what they're doing. Okay, assuming that they know what they're doing, I actually find Paladin to be incredibly potent in stopping your opponents from getting kills on your team. Paladin is incredibly good at denial, incredibly good at preventing just those really bad deaths that'll send the enemy team into a really deep snowball. So because of that, because of the ability to stop opponents from killing like your most valuable players, say your samurai or your dragoon who's going in and they need a little bit of protection, Paladin can do that. Paladin has a stun. Paladin's LB also is a invulnerability for themselves and a 50% reduction in damage to everyone around them, which is pretty good. It's a pretty good engaging tool. Say everyone's fighting and on the point, you're in overtime, and you're kind of falling behind, but all of a sudden your Paladin pops their LB, and all of a sudden your team is pretty much tanky, the tankiest they can be for the next 10 seconds, and you turn that tide, and then you push your crystal to victory. So Paladin I actually think is really strong, not as strong as Warrior, but still a very good pick. I'm gonna put Paladin in A tier. Next we have the Dark Knight. I feel like Dark Knight is also a very strong tank. It has crazy damage potential, more so than the other two tanks. It's very sticky, is a term that I've been hearing lately. It can stick onto you pretty hard. Salted Earth has the ability to kind of yank you into the Dark Knight's skills, yank you into the team. It has incredible they're very good at distracting the opponent into attacking them when they shouldn't. A lot of the times you think that attacking a Dark Knight would be beneficial to your team, and you got to kill the Dark Knight eventually, right? But the Dark Knight can have such an impact in wasting your enemy's resources, kind of like the Paladin. In that the Paladin takes away the resources from the enemy, makes them use their burst when they shouldn't, especially due to their LB, which is not only a giant nuke, it also makes them completely immune to death for 10 seconds. So a lot of and it's very hard to notice if you didn't visually see it. So if you're just running into battle and you see the Dark Knight low, you're going to try to pop them with hard hitting things, and try to kill them when they are immune to death the entire time. So very strong job, and just because of that, just because of the ability to drain the enemy of their really good resources, I'm putting Dark Knight in A tier. Also their ability to kill, they have really strong attacks. Next we have Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker is unfortunately in a pretty bad place right now. Gunbreaker has the potential to make really good plays. It has the potential to really shift the tide of battle with its LB, because it's a giant AoE, and at the end of it you do a big ol' stun. But warriors can stun like that for free every 15 seconds. Gunbreakers have to use their limit break. They have to get through their entire combo, which by the way does not give them CC immunity. You can be CC'd during this, which means you can be things like silenced, stunned, polymorphed. You know, you can be denied. The Gunbreaker can only do well if you are not being pressured. And in PvP, you are constantly being pressured, especially if you're melee. Gunbreaker has no ranged option. They need to stay in melee the whole time. So because of that, I put them down with the Reaper in C tier. They need something to help them. They need a stun somewhere. They need a slow. They need some type of shield to protect them from when they go in, because they have the damage potential, but they're so vulnerable to crowd control. It makes it really hard to make an impact on a game as a Gunbreaker. So, all right, so that's the tanks. You might be noticing that nothing is in S plus tier. Everything we have S tier, A tier, B, C. Nothing is in S plus yet. Don't worry, we'll get to the S plus tier here soon. Let's go with range DPS though right now. Range DPS. So we're gonna start off with Dancer. So Dancer is in a spot right now which is not too bad. Not too bad. It's not the best. It has a lot of ranged support options. It has a lot of ranged damage options. They do lack a little bit of burst. All of their damage is generally, you know, consistent, gradual DPS, which in PvP is not that great, but, you know, they're trying to assist their team in kills. That's the general purpose of Dancer. You buff up your dance partner pretty well. So if you partner up like with a Dragoon, or you partner up with a Samurai, you're going to make a big difference in their DPS as well. So keep that in mind. And their LB is actually incredibly strong. Their LB is a AoE charm. If you get hit with the beginning of the charm, you will be charmed. The charm lasts for about 3 seconds or so, and there's nothing you can do about it. This can change games. This could potentially win you games if you know when to use it. You're relying on your team to capitalize on your charm. If your team is not paying attention, and your team does not capitalize on your abilities, you're going to struggle with Dancer, and it's going to feel bad. But it's not terrible. It's still a pretty good range DPS option. I'm going to put it in B tier with Monk. Next we have the Bard. Now, I find Bards to be pretty powerful, and sometimes you'll see a Bard on your team and you think, well, they're not going to do that much damage, right? Which is potentially true. Bards don't have the best damage output. However, they do have decent burst. Imperial Arrow will use all 3 charges of their arrow to do a decent amount of potency. I believe it's 12,000 potency if they unleash all 3 arrows, somewhere around there. In addition, they have a Warden's Paeon, which you can place on any of your melee as soon as they go in. It breaks them out of any CC, so really good support. Their Limit Break is very good. You use it in the middle of your team gets stronger, you get stronger, their LB gauge goes up faster, which means you could potentially give your Dragoon another LB during the game. You could potentially give your Samurai another LB. You know, so that's really game-changing right there. The biggest thing with Bard is, well, before I talk about that, they also have a knockback. Well, it's a knockback for themselves. They jump back and bind the enemy, so they can easily get out of situations where an enemy is trying to pressure them. They can just jump back, bind them, get into a better position to further empower their back line. The biggest thing for Bards, and a lot of people do see this, is their 20-second cooldown, single target, instant cast, silence ability. Now, this is an incredibly powerful tool, which will allow you to not only pick off kills that you were going for, you can use this on an ally's target to help them get a kill as well. Use this on an enemy when they're about 50-40% health, and you pretty much cut down any chance of them successfully defending themselves. They can't guard when they're silenced. They can't heal. They can't do anything. And this lasts 3 to 4 seconds. This is an incredibly powerful tool. And it's a little frustrating. It's a little frustrating sometimes running into so much silence, especially as a melee. But if you've ever been silenced in PvP, you understand how powerful bards can be, and their single target silence can be, and their LB can be, giving other people stronger LB, more consistent LB. So just because of that, I'm putting bard in the A tier. Okay, next we have Machinist. Now, Machinist is incredibly powerful as well. Machinist is actually the main that I am using to rank up right now. I have the most experience on Machinist. Machinist is a powerhouse. Machinist is a powerhouse when it comes to dealing damage, and when it comes to assisting your team in getting kills. Things like drill going through guard is incredibly powerful. It would kill enemies that aren't expecting to die. You can analysis drill them through their shield. Analysis Bioblaster is also very strong in an AoE situation. You can toss out a wildfire on top of the target. Doesn't even matter really who. Obviously you want to prioritize a squishier target, but if everyone is on the point and you wildfire Bioblaster, that wildfire is going to detonate in the middle of their team. The wildfire is AoE, so it'll do a big old detonation in the middle of their team. It'll feel amazing when this happens. Just so much consistent damage. Their air anchor, very strong utility tool. If you use analysis on it, it becomes a stun. I find that a lot of enemies generally break the stun, so I feel like using analysis on the air anchor is probably the weakest choice for analysis, just because the bind will do just as well. Usually binding an enemy will be enough for them to use their purify, or for your team to jump on them. Their chainsaw, you always, in my opinion, want to analysis your chainsaw. Every single time you have a chainsaw, try to hit as many people as you can, use analysis, and go for that proc. Because I know it's really low, it's only like 3%, but if you hit the entire enemy team, 3 times 5 people, 15%, you have 15% chance of killing one person on their team instantly. Every time you do that. And that can really swing games. Having their tank suddenly die, having their healer suddenly die, having their Dragoon suddenly hit the floor. It's very, very strong. Their Bishop turret is also very powerful. Place it down on the point. It makes it so enemies take more damage, and it even shields your allies if your allies are in the area as well. Very powerful utility tool. And of course, you got to mention their LB, which Marksman Spite, giant 36,000 potency shot to whoever you want, 50 yalm range, so it's a literal sniper shot. You can blast someone from downtown and they won't be expecting it. Just be wary of guard. The damage of it is affected by guard. If you are shooting someone while they're guarding with snipe, you'll do something piddly like 4,000 damage. So as long as they're not guarding, you should be able to get some good results out of the snipe. So we're gonna put Machinist in A tier, right next to the Bard. High damage potential, and it can change games, so that's why it's up here. Also, it's my personal favorite, so it's gonna be above Bard. Okay, next we have our caster DPS. Okay, so we got Black Mage here. So Black Mage is in an interesting spot. Black Mage has the potential to be an absolute monster on the battlefield. Absolute monster. It has the potential to decimate your opponents without them even being in line of sight. Their LB is incredibly strong. The longer they survive, the more powerful they get. So if they are left alone, if they are left in the back line, if they have incredibly good positioning, their burst potential is insane. The problem is, usually, at least for me, and I feel like a lot of people in PvP, we understand this. We understand if there is a black mage on the enemy team, that black mage needs to die. And so generally you'll find, as a black mage, you will be getting focused. You will be getting shot. If the enemy team knows what they're doing, you will be harassed. And that makes it incredibly difficult for the black mage to do basically anything. Black mages don't do really well under pressure. So because it's such a job that relies on not being targeted, and you are going to be targeted for sure, I'm going to have to place it down in the B tier. It's not as bad as it could be. It's just that it requires a lot of setup, and it requires a lot of your team really protecting you. And so Black Mage does go really well with Paladin. If your Paladin really knows how to protect you, you'll do really well with the Paladin. But your team really needs to watch out for you, and because of that, I'm putting you in Black Mage in the B tier. Summoners. Okay, so Summoner has incredibly strong burst potential. Incredibly strong. They have ranged AoE that will pretty much CC your opponent. Their Titan move binds you. Their Garuda move puts a giant circle on the ground, which negates a little bit of the pushing zone, right? As long as you're inside or around that circle. So you negate a lot of zone coverage. And you provide a lot of zone coverage for your team. It also has incredibly strong LB in the form of Bahamut. Your screen will just shake, and there's just be a giant plethora of explosions happening. Bahamut showed up, and he's here to wreck your team. Surprisingly, it also does pretty well defensively. That was my biggest surprise fighting against Summoners, is that Summoners actually, especially with good positioning, they actually are pretty difficult to kill at times. They're probably one of the easier picks as well. You don't really need to do a lot of practice on Summoner in order to be a good Summoner. And I feel like if you want to climb, picking a job that you don't really want to learn or put too much effort into, like perfecting, you can just do what you can and make a decent impact for your team. Summoner is the way to go. So I'm going to put Summoner up here in S tier. Very, very strong caster. You won't go wrong. You can't do any wrong picking Summoner for PvP. You'll do well. Oh, okay. And now we're getting to Red Mage. All right. Red Mage. Oh, wow. Where to start? Red Mage is by far the most frustrating job to play against. By far. There's one other caster on this list who's pretty frustrating to play against. However, I do believe Red Mages take the cake. The whole cake. Okay. They have a line, giant conal, front center beam that deals massive damage. And depending on what stance you're in, either black mana stance or white mana stance, it'll do a certain effect. Okay? if you are in black stance, when you do the line AoE, it's called Resolution. You will bind everybody that you hit in a line for 3 seconds. Okay? Very, very strong. Binding an entire enemy team completely kills their momentum. Okay? And they can do this consistently. However, more than likely, you'll be hit with the white aspected attack. And the white aspected attack resolution is a line AoE silence for 3 seconds on anybody who's hit. Now think about that. Bard was placed in the A tier for having a single target silence, right? Red mages can do this in a line that deals damage. So you could potentially silence the entire enemy team every 15 seconds or so. Just because of that, it belongs in S tier, but we're not even done. Okay? We're not even done. Alright? Red mages also have insane amounts of burst damage. If they jump in on you with their melee combo in their black mana stance, you get a dot on you for each time they hit you. Every single time. The 3-part combo will put a different dot on you each and every time. And from my experience and from what I heard, this damage cannot be guarded. If it's already on you, this damage cannot be protected from. You will take the whole damage. 6k a tick. The whole time. Incredibly powerful. And if they engage onto you, they do more damage to you specifically, and you do less damage to them. Okay? If they somehow are losing the duel, they can backflip out of it and get away from you scot-free. Though they won't be losing the duel, let's be honest. Red mages are masters of dueling, so they won't be losing that duel. If you happen to even survive their initial burst combo, if you happen to survive, another thing that's more than likely is they have a giant nuke for you, waiting for you as soon as you come out of guard. You're going to get hit with a Verflare for 17,000 damage. And you'll probably get re-engaged on right afterwards. They'll probably silence you. They'll probably bind you. They'll kill you. They will murder you. And they will feel no pity or remorse. Red Mage is S+ tier. Easy. Easy S+. The strongest DPS job in PvP in the game by far. If you're looking to make impacts on every single game you play, if you're looking to make... I didn't even mention their LB. Their LB is a giant cross that you just slam down on the floor that deals damage, 24,000 damage in a giant plus sign. So they're incredibly good at jumping in on the point. They'll silence everybody in a line. They'll dash in. They'll drop the cross. They'll Verflare you. They'll do their combo on you. They'll backflip out. If you're fighting against an enemy red mage, you need to make sure that they are your priority. You want to get each and every red mage off the battlefield as fast as you can, or you're going to be in trouble. A red mage unhampered is chaos for you. And it's an easy S+ tier. Blue Mage is C tier. Okay, so now we got the healers. Okay. Oh, so I guess we're not done talking about S plus tier, because the first one that we got on the list, you knew it was coming. If you played any type of PvP, ranked or casual, you already know where this is going. I'm gonna place it up in S plus tier, and it's not even a question. White mages are absolutely ridiculous on the battlefield. Their LB is a giant AoE line stun that gives the white mage more damage. It makes you do less damage. It heals allies. It's incredibly powerful. You can do it every 45 seconds or so, even sooner if you have like a bard. It just has... It's probably the best LB in PvP in the game. I know people will probably say, well, Samurai is good, Ninja's good, and Dragoon is good. And you're right. They are good. And they're great. But the white mage can get their LB... If they have a bard on their team, they could probably do an LB, assuming they're not dying, which they won't be. They'll be doing it almost twice a minute, and it changes. It absolutely changes the flow of battle. You completely negate the enemy team's push, their onslaught. It stalls them the entire time. They're stunned. It makes them do less damage. It's just so strong. It's so strong. When it comes to their abilities, they have a 2-second polymorph, which is probably the most frustrating thing you'll ever experience besides silence. It cannot be cleansed. It's instant cast. They can do it every 15-20 seconds or so. So if you're engaging, like say you're a warrior and you fell rend and you jump at them and you get polymorph, there's nothing you can do for 2 seconds. You're gonna get converged on. There goes your flow. If you're a samurai, you're dashing around. You dash in, you get polymorphed. There goes your flow. You more than likely will get stunned right afterwards. Same thing with ninja. Same thing with you. You won't be able to Shikuchi out or anything like that because you're a pig, right? Their Aqua Veil is incredibly strong. When I'm playing Machinist, there are so many times where I'm playing against the white mage and I'll drill for 0 because of Aqua Veil. I'll chainsaw for 0 damage. Their shield potential is really strong. Cure 2 is just a really strong tool. If they dash in, which you will see white mages do, their heals become AoE and it becomes stronger. So they have incredible healing potential. More than likely, you'll see white mages at the very, very, very top of healing. Just naturally playing the game. If you want to climb and you want to play a healer and you want to get that easy crystal rank, you got to pick up white mage. White mage will carry you all the way. It will carry you to the end, and you will laugh as the corpses of your enemies litter the floor. They may think you're a healer, but you are death incarnate, and they will learn to fear you. Easy S+. Next is Scholar. Scholar is pretty good. The rest of the healers are actually pretty decent. I don't feel like any of the healers are particularly weak. They just don't match White Mage in any capacity. Scholar has good damage potential. They spread their dot around. They have good... their Mummify ability is pretty good. They have to be in melee range to use it, but it's pretty decent. Pretty decent damage. Their LB is okay with they summon Seraph, and Seraph does a bunch of protective spells. The problem with Scholar is that it doesn't have the potential to swing games. You're basically relying on your team to capitalize on all your AoE damage and all your dots. But you have really good push potential. You can shield up your entire team before a push. You can shield up your entire team during a during an enemy push. Really good team synergy. Because of that, it's going in the B tier. Next is Astrologian. Astrologian basically does everything a bard does when it comes to support. It makes your team stronger. It has pretty good damage potential as well. Unfortunately for Astrologian, it kind of falls into the same category as Black Mage, where if you're focused, you're going to have a real hard time. You don't really have too many things to get people off of you. I find that whenever I target an Astrologian, if it's myself and another person was trying to kill the Astrologian, we more than likely would. But, you know, really good support. If your team knows how to play around protecting you, you will protect your team in turn. And so because of that, I'm also putting Ast in the B tier. And finally, we have Sage. Sage also has a lot of burst potential. Sage also has a lot of playmaking potential. The ability Toxicon is very, very strong. It makes it so the enemy takes more damage. You could use this in an AoE. This also can be buffed based on your Cardia. Cardia is a very strong tool. You're going to be doing damage anyway, so you might as well give someone free healing for it, you know? So it's free healing on all of your damage. Phlegma is an incredibly bursty tool. You can Toxicon, you can jump in and you slam them, double Phlegma in AoE. That's a lot of burst damage. Because of that, because of the ability to do burst, and because Sage's LB is also potentially game-changing. It's a circle that you place on the ground, and enemies' attacks that come from outside of that circle don't do any damage. So you can negate Summoner, you can negate Ninja, they're usually outside of the circle. You can negate Machinist attacks, Bard attacks, Black Mage attacks. So the LB is incredibly strong, game-changing, potentially, especially if you're in overtime. If you're in overtime and you're hard on that crystal and the Sage puts that circle down, you're going to have a hard time because you need to get in that circle to deal damage, and you get afflicted with all kinds of debuffs. The Sage loves it when you're in melee range, so that'll put you at a disadvantage. I think Sage actually has a leg up over the other two healers that I placed in B tier, so I am placing it here in A tier. Also, this is a meme. Don't get too flustered. It's just maybe Blue Mage will see PvP one day. I think it'll actually be pretty fun if they do. If Blue Mage was somehow brought into PvP somehow, I actually think that it would be really fun. I hope they do that one day. But anyway, guys, this is my tier list for Final Fantasy XIV 6.1 PvP in the current state. There are some clear balancing issues when it comes to S+ tier, and some clear balancing issues when it comes to C tier. But as you can see, most jobs are actually pretty okay. There needs to be a little bit of tuning in here, but overall, for their first attempt, I actually think they did pretty well. Let's hope that they do not take too long to balance this out. Hopefully we'll see changes sooner rather than later. I'm still doing my climb myself. I am climbing through Plat. I am almost to Diamond, and hopefully soon I will make it to Crystal. I don't know if my opinions on this will change. This is just my opinions based off the PvP I've done so far. As I said, I've been doing PvP consistently throughout the week. I've been trying to rank. And this is just my overall experience. This is my personal opinion on balance so far. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, any if you want to discuss where I placed a certain particular job, please just leave it in the comments below. And if you are interested in watching me rank, I do go live over on Twitch, twitch.tv/mealbasta. You can see me there generally in the evenings, PST, sometime around, I want to say 4, but you know, that varies wildly. Just go ahead, I'll leave the description or a link up to that in the description below. And hopefully I will see you guys there. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, everybody, and you all have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.